And I am sorry. It seems like I had some technical issues that eventually led to the situation where my press stream didn't work. And fortunately, I managed to fix everything just in these 10 minutes of my pre-stream, which eventually led me here to the beginning of our stream where we are playing a video game visual novel, autumn visual novel, named no Virche Era Salvation. And we're already past the middle of the story, I'd say. Currently, we're going through the route of Yves, and I will probably shortly remind you about the events from the previous stream. Also, hello, Klopp. Hello, Ashes. It's nice to see you both here. Feel free to say hi if you want to. But yeah, I'll shortly remind you the events of the previous stream. We've learned some new information. First of all, it was revealed to us that our dear friend, and we probably can already say that beloved of our protagonist, Ceres, Yves is actually a guardian of Licorices noirs, flowers of misfortune, black flowers covering the outskirts of the island. The last living member, if I'm not wrong, of a family, of a dynasty of guardians that had to put their lives into taking care of these flowers, and thus preserving them through times, allowing them to exist, allowing them to bloom, saving them from withering and wilting. Also, we have learned something related to suspicious suicides, which were initially associated with Bourreau. Horrific suicides where people on their own gouged their hearts of their own chests, ripped their chests apart with blood and tissue under their fingers, and did it all with smiles, with mad smiles on their faces. It turns out that it surprisingly resembles circumstances of death of two people 18 years ago. Two people that happened to be parents of Ceres, of our sweet protagonist. Also, it can be said that something unfortunate, very unfortunate, happened. New murders made by seemingly Bourreau. A lot of corpses founded that were found in one of the artificial alleys in Cohen against turned the sentiments of people in hatred against Ceres. Fear, hatred. And she had to run away and eventually finish with nowhere to have a place for her. Hello, Ashes. How was your day treating you? Hello, Club. I'm not sure how much did you hear from what I've been saying, so I will repeat. I apologize for inconveniences that happened to be a problem. because of my internet issues, and I didn't have a normal press stream. Well, at least I managed to fix it in time. How are you, Club? But yeah, I retold the events of the previous stream, and also didn't mention yet that for a short time we've been saved by Cian, but only for him to say that he don't want us to dig deeper into the suspicious death. Otherwise, he threatened to take care of Sarah's in a bad way, which is to make some experiments on her. And at the very end, they haggled with Yves on some medium. And at this moment, we've been left by Cian, and now we are going back by the corridors of Research Institute, where we have found our kid boy Dahat.
寝ていた僕を叩き起こして依頼のために向かわせたっていうのに、わざわざ喧嘩売るような真似をして追い返すなんて。うちの俺様上司が本当にすみませんです。
He handed Eve a box of chocolates as an apology, which Eve reluctantly accepted.
いや、いいんだよ。研修は専門家に任せるのが一番だし。
でも仮にも一緒にお酒まで飲んだお友達だっていうのに。
シアンさん、公私混同はしなさそうですからね。
果たして彼に功があるのかは怪しいところではありますが、副所長たるダハト様としてはいかがでしょう。シアン様と同意見ですか？
まさか。僕は可能な限り皆さんの力になりたいと思ってますよ。せっかくできたお友達ですしね。とはいえ僕も副所長とは言っても雇われの身。シアンさんの決定に逆らえるはずもなく。
I'm glad you've been alright so far, Ashes. Club says I was lazy today. And now it's raining here. It's no good for my poor house. So I'll be only lurking today. I see. Well, please take care. I hope you will be fine. At the very end.
さすがに死体の横流しといったことはできそうにないですね。あと立場関係なく腐乱した死体からの疫病や伝染病の可能性を考えると、素人が死体を保管することは推奨できません。エクソシスト教団が運営する例の病院だってそこまでの設備は整ってないはず。
The heart then frowned at the sight of Sarah's on unsteady footing.
シアンさんがお世話になったセレスさんが苦しんでいるのを放置するのは心苦しい。ということで僕の方でちょっとシステムに介入して、変死体発生の連絡が警備兵へ伝達されるのを数分だけ遅らせてみましょう。その間に自警団の皆さんの方で現場保存という体で薬状に触れない範囲の調査をしちゃってください。
システムに介入ってそんなことをしていいんですか？
もちろんダメですよ。バレたら大目玉です。けどまあシアンさん愉快犯なところがありますし、絡めて OK っていうことはイブさんたちがどういうアプローチでこの事件を調べていくか試してるのかもです。
わかった。じゃあその期待に応えないとね。
Eve repositioned Ceres in his arms.
早速なんだけど、君に聞きたいことがあるんだ。彼女の亡くなった両親について調べてもらうことはできる？
なるほどなるほど。リコリスの花畑で心臓ね。確かに今回の件と酷似してます。了解です。僕が履歴を調べておきます。データが消失していなければ身体チェックの結果も閲覧できるはずですから。
ありがとう。よろしく頼むよ。
話もまとまったところで、今夜はどうしましょうか？
裏通りを通ってこっそりクルーンに戻るよ。ヒューゴも心配してるだろうし、シアンさんとの交渉の件もアドルフたちに伝えないと。勝手に条件をまとめたこと怒られるかな。
大丈夫だと思いますけど、もし怒られたらイブさんも食い下がったんだって僕がちゃんと証言しますね。
Eve gently patted Matthews on the head, and as a show of thanks. Sarah's face was still pale. She had remained silent the entire time without expressing a single emotion.
帰ろう、セレス。俺たちの大事なクルーンに、あの家に咲くリコリスたちもきっと俺たちの帰りを待ってる。
His gentle voice reached Sarah's. Hello, Halfdown. Thank you for coming. Glad to hear you. Well, read you here. How was your day? Yes. Her soft voice accompanied a gentle nod. I almost forgot. It's a small but important detail. During the previous stream, Cappuccino took drew 2 vials of Sarah's blood. Given what we have seen, what we have learned about Dr. Cappuccino, it's not a good sign. Halfton says, good so far. Going for a hike in a couple of hours. So now I'm just resting. Well, I hope I will be able to give you a nice and comfortable place for resting. And I wish you a good hike. I haven't did anything like that for many years. But it's not like I had anywhere to do so. In cells extracted from the blood, one could look deeper to discover chromosomes filled with genes that compose the human body. Yes, those genes determine the composition of the human body. I was so overjoyed that I destroyed pieces of the collection around me.
素晴らしい。まさかナディアの他にこんなにも美しい遺伝子を持つ者がいるとは。このおぞましくも美しい二重らせんからなる染色体の形、そして数、まるであの花のようではないか。なぜ、どうして遺伝子を編集してもいないのにこんな遺伝子を持つ人間が生まれたのだ。まさか彼女が本当に死神だとでも。
No, that didn't matter.
彼女の遺伝子もまた私のコレクションに加えるにふさわしい。一刻も早く本体を手に入れなくては。
But
遺伝子の動きが不完全だ。染色体の形も時々不自然に歪んでいる。
Looking closer, I saw some odd cells that were different from her other cells, as if they were somehow suppressing her cells and rewriting the information etched into her genes.
忌まわしい。どこの誰だ。私の遺伝子をこんな形で怪我したのは。
This also meant that someone was aware of her unique physical state aside from me. This certain someone injected these cells in an offer to prevent others from knowing about them. Absolutely despicable. I won't let anyone take her.
今まではナディアを最優先としていたが、後回しだ。まずはこの忌まわしい細胞を消し去り、美しい遺伝子の本来の姿を取り戻さなければ。すぐに迎えに行くから待っていてくれたまえ。私のかわいいかわいいリコリスの姫君。
I have a question for you, all those who listen to me. How would you feel if someone was gooning over your DNA? How would it make you feel? I also not sure how would I feel about it. But that's something at very least awkward. It seemed I was out cold for a while. Where am I? Asha says, I think I'd be indifferent. Perhaps I think they ought to have better tasting genes. And what genes would Yugun override? I dare to ask. Yeah, I would agree that abduction and stalking is far greater concern, but still. It's interesting. What is Yves from? Why am I here? My memory slowly returned. I remembered being in Coin when we came upon the site of the massacre. I was in complete shock. Eve came to help me. Then we all escaped to the Institute. I vaguely remember Eve and Cian exchanging words in a serious conversation, but I can't get myself to remember exactly what they were talking about. I did remember one thing vividly, that Eve kept protecting me and that he held me by his side the whole time.
お人よしも大概にしろよ。お前、自分が今までどんだけ努力してこの国の奴らから信頼を勝ち取ったと思ってんだ。その全てがあの死神のせいでぶっ壊されるかもしれねえんだぞ。
I could hear yelling from behind the door. Is that Hugo? There was only one person who called Eve a goody two shoes. Asha says something that might expand my metabolic abilities.
ごめん 彼女を預かることを君に何の相談もなく決めたのは悪かったと思ってる。
Allowing me to photosynthesize, perhaps? Well, I would agree that something like photosynthesis would be a fine addition to the vegetative lifestyle we could aspire to obtain, but alas, alas. So far, we are far from this.
でも俺はセレスだからこそそばに置いて守ろうと決めたんだ。
Yes, says Ashes. I wish to Vegimax. Sorry.
いつもの親切や人助けのつもりで引き受けたんじゃない。
なんでそこまであいつのこと。
Which is why I really love this place, and the liquor is gorgeous. They grow without fear and bloom despite the hatred of others. Hafton says, I'm guessing photosynthesis doesn't produce enough energy for human brain activity. Well, it is true. But as an addition, it would be fine. Even more than fine. However, I see a significant disadvantage of having a photosynthesis. I would afraid that, at least in case of me, I'm not sure about you, Hafton, or Ashes, or others in chat, but for me, such a great ability would be kind of useless because to actively exploit it, I'd have to be under the sunlight, which is strongly against my preferences, tendencies, and I would say generally life path. Ashes adds, it'll be enough if I have gigantic leaf wings as well. Leaf wings. Well, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I can get a grow lamp or something and shine it on my back, she continues. Well, it's partial solution, but still, that's some illumination, which is already a thing that can be considered, but still somewhat undesirable. They grow without fear and bloom despite the hatred of others. I've always seen them as family to me. So, thank you for protecting them so diligently, Yves.
好きだと言ってくれたんだ。
No, I definitely don't bother by concerns of purism. It's rather concerns of being illuminated at all. I long for darkness.
は？君やアドルフにもいつか教えたリコリス・ノワージュの守護者である俺の使命。それを知っても彼女は決して無意味だと言わず、それどころか誰もが嫌い、必要としないあの場所を好きだと。守ってくれてありがとうって 嬉しそうに言ったんだ。あの子にとっては些細な言葉だったのかもしれないけどさ、俺すごく嬉しかったんだよ。だから俺は決めたんだ。この先何があっても俺たちの長く虚しい使命を丸ごと愛しい感情に変えてくれた彼女の居場所になるんだって。
たかが花を褒めたぐらいでなんだって言うんだよ。な綺麗事なら誰でも吐ける。仮にそれが本心からの言葉だとしても、お前のあの傷を見たら化け物扱いして逃げるに決まって。
ヒューゴ。
悪い、今のはそんなつもりじゃ。
いいよ、事実だから。俺もこの醜い火傷の跡を見せたら彼女との関係は終わると思ってる。両親や悲鳴を上げて逃げていった今までの人たちのように。
裏切られるのが分かってるのに守るなんて、やっぱまともじゃねえよお前は。もう勝手にしやがれ。この家はお前の家だ。誰を居候させようとお前の自由だよ。ああ、
ヒューゴ。
お前が無理するなっつったんだぞ。だったら遠慮なくしばらくの間俺はクルーンを抜けさせてもらう。俺が頭を冷やして戻ってくるまでいつもみたいに無茶して死ぬんじゃねえぞボケイブ。
ありがとうヒューゴ。彼女のことは大切だけど俺の相棒は君だけだ。ずっと帰りを待ってるからね。
だったら怒るか引き止めろよバカ。
I could hear Hugo slam open the door and storm out. The person who was always by Yves' side was now gone from Korun, and though he had simply vanished. Was it because of me? I needed to leave. Hurry, hurry, hurry. I couldn't keep causing him misfortune and grief any longer. I tried to get out of bed and tumbled down. I couldn't stand properly, as my shaking legs were still tangled in the sheets. I needed to climb out of the window and...
ごめん。今の会話聞こえてたんだ。
A gentle voice came from behind. Before I knew it, my body rose from the ground. I was gently set down on the bed again.
ここを抜け出してどこに行くつもりだったの？
The voice wasn't reprimanding me. He was calm and gentle as he tucked me into bed. Somewhere other than here.
行くあては？
I'm not sure. He smiled as if he knew I would say that. I need to leave before I take away anything else that's precious to you. I need to leave Korun. That's why I need to leave.
俺は君に何かを奪われた記憶なんてない。
But Hyoko...
ヒューゴなら絶対に戻ってくる。彼、
But me being here made him act like the others. I can't risk you and Hugo. I can't let you die because I'm death.
違うよ。君はそんなすごい力なんて持ってない。目に見えない噂に君自身まで惑わされないで。
Eve patted me gently, as though he was trying to console me.
君はどんなに外の世界が怖くても誰かのために一歩足を踏み出せる勇気のある女の子。食材として飼っている魚に名前をつけちゃう可愛い一面を持ってる女の子。料理が得意で温かくて優しいシチューを作れる家庭的な女の子。花を家族みたいと言ってくれるロマンチストな女の子。ほら、怖いところより可愛いところの方がたくさん。根拠のない噂なんかよりそっちの方に自信を持って。そんな君が人の死を願い招くはずがないって俺は心から信じてる。たとえこの国の誰もが君を死神と呼び続けても俺だけは君を愛して
Eve,
困ったな。いつも軽薄な愛の言葉ばかり口にしてるせいか、肝心な時に君を励ませるような他の綺麗な言葉が出てこない。こんなもどかしさは初めてだ。薄情な自分が恨めしいよ。
I shook my head in response. You're wrong. Your sincerity is what made you hold back just now, knowing the gravity of what love means. Thank you, Eve. Everything you just said made me really happy. I don't want to give up yet. I know I might be asking for a lot, but can I be a normal girl in front of you?
そこはいつまでもって言ってほしいかな。
I knew I couldn't say that. Each time he touched me and whispered, a powerful urge within me was telling me that I wanted to be someone special to him. That was something I could never wish for. Ah, dear God. Whether I was human or actually death. Please, watch over this dear person. Please protect him so that he never sees misfortune ever again. That was my wish. My one and only wish.
初めてあいつを見た時の記憶と感情は今も焦ずこの胸に眩しく強く輝いていて、その笑顔をすぐそばで見ていたいと思ったんだ。
Discovering the bodies whose hearts were gouged out contradicted the idea that Burrow was dead. The corpses being found near both the orphanage and Kurun didn't bode well. It didn't take long for the people to gossip about the Maiden of Death in Coin as the prime suspect. The people gathered around the orphanage to discuss what to do about her.
死神なんて保護するのがそもそも間違ってたのよ。もっと早く貧民街にでも放り出してのたれ死にさせればよかったんだわ。
やめろよ。シスターサロメに罪はないだろう。そうか。死神をかばい続けたあの人にだって責任はあるだろう。
Salome let out a sigh as she watched the Coin residence from the window. The children were frightened by the relentless stares and locked themselves in their
マ
rooms.
ム、どうするんだ？あの死者って人が言ってたみたいに、セレスを施設から追放したことにすんのかよ。
今までとは比較にならないほど住人たちの不満が溜まっている以上、他の子供たちのことを考えるとどうしてもね。けれどミロはどうしたいの？事件の話を聞いて、あの子
そりゃ正直に言えば怖いよ。場所や時間からして単なる偶然とは思えないし。でもさ、あいつより平気で人の悪口を言う他の人間の方が怖い。あいつらの中にはクルーンでセレスに散々世話になったやつだっているんだろ。証拠もないのになんであんな簡単に態度を変えられるんだよ。少しは恩とか感じないわけ？
いつかリダイバーになれば恩なんてものは全て消え記録になり果てる。だから付き合いの浅い相手なら都合が悪くなったら切り捨てても問題ない。私も含めこの国の人々の頭にはそういった甘えがあるのかもしれないわね。
待てよ。じゃあずっと住人たちを助けてきたクルーンのことも？
さすがにそこまで両親は捨てていないと信じたいけれど、今後の状況次第じゃないかしら。
Milo clenched his jaw with frustration, and Salome couldn't help but feel the same way. Ceres has encountered many deaths, just like the recent incident. It was true that Salome protected Ceres, thinking that there may have been something behind her curse as death. But
あの子のために何もできないことがこんなにももどかしいなんて。
she was the same as Adolphe now. The girl had long since ceased to be a means to an end. A few nights had passed. The recent peace we enjoyed had vanished. Death continued every night without fail. They spread to Chernival and Chadis. The smell of blood began to fill the air. The corps and the royal guard were busy gathering the bodies before they rotted. The screams of the people pierced through the air as more bodies with their chests gouged out were discovered every night. In fact, I could even hear the screams from Korun, where I had been since the start. I hadn't stepped outside, not even once, ever since that day. If I did go out, the people would surround and interrogate me as though I was the culprit behind the death. As for Yves, who was protecting me, he stepped out to secure another body that was found earlier this morning. Cian hadn't yet shared any autopsy reports with us. Even Dr. Cappuccino hadn't contacted us after he took some blood samples from me. We were still lucky that the residents hadn't forced their way inside Korun, but it's pretty frustrating not being able to know what's happening outside apart from what I'm told. The mysterious deaths by supposed suicide were spreading like the flu ever since I came to Korun. It was different from the curse I usually spread, but it was likely still my doing. I caused trouble to Hugo too. Yves and Hugo parted ways during an argument about me. Eve told me that Hugo would return soon enough, but they were supposed to be partners, and they got into that fight, which wouldn't have happened if I wasn't here at Kurun. I wanted to be like any other girl. If I hadn't desired something so sinful, and if I had gone through with killing myself, then none of this would have happened. As I ruminated over the present thoughts,
ただいまセレス。ここしばらく一人で留守番ばかりさせちゃってごめんね。はい、これお土産。アドルフが収穫したての野菜分けてくれたんだ。
Welcome back, Eve. Let me get some water right away. I smiled weakly at Eve, who was covered in blood. The blood on his clothes and skin weren't his, but rather from the bodies he had been inspecting. Yves had been tirelessly working to find proof of my innocence. He put a halt on his business here and was working with the core. I assumed the blood on him was helping the guards from the institute move the bodies. I have hot water ready for you to wash up with, and I can use the vegetables to get something ready for dinner. After a week of seeing him return, covered in blood, I grew accustomed to it. I quickly got to washing his clothes so that he could have some well-earned rest, and because he didn't have too many uniforms. I had to switch my train of thought and do what I could so I could repay him for the trouble I was causing. Yves is investigating on his own because of me. A few hours later, I handed Yves a fresh towel after he washed up and changed into a fresh set of clothes. So, how are things outside? Yves took the towel from me and dried his hair as he groaned a bit, obviously thinking of how to phrase it. He shrugged, knowing there was no hiding it.
完全な混乱状態だね。変死の被害もこのクーネを中心に勢いよく広がってる。遺体が見つからない晩の方が珍しいぐらい。前に羊の世話をしに行った区域あったよね。あそこでも昨晩大量死が起きたみたいで。
I see. More victims found at a location I had been before. It seemed my thoughts were easy to read, as Eve smiled to try and console me.
ただの偶然だよ。何も君が行く場所全部で死人が出てるわけじゃない。第一その理論なら、一緒に暮らしてる俺が真っ先に死なないとおかしくない？
Don't say such a thing.
君が最初に不安そうな顔をしたんじゃないか。
I couldn't deny that. So, how are things outside? Have the people been saying anything bad about you or keeping me here?
みんな、特に何も変わってないよ。いつも通り親しくしてくれてるから、安心して。むしろ今は、遺体の調査どころか、観察すらろくにできないことの方が、よっぽど問題かな。予想以上に警備兵の守りが固い。さすが。シアンさんが直々に雇ってる人たちのことはある。
Eve then shrugged and told me that the royal guard was on edge now too. According to Eve, even though the hut was assisting us from the shadows, the guards arrived really quickly before Eve could secure the bodies. Once the guards got there, they cordoned off the crime scene to prevent anyone from going near the bodies.
で、 家の中でまで変死事件のことを考えてたら嫌でも暗くなっちゃうや。少し早いけど夕食を作ろうか。お、そろそろ服も食べ頃じゃない？
Eve moved towards the fishbowl, only to be greeted by Buffy playing dead. It was a lot rounder than before, since I had been feeding it every day. Would you like to have domestic fugu fish? Or general puffer fish? Eve, that little one's kept me company as a conversation partner while you've been out. I don't like fish as pets. Too gross, says Halftone. I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, are fish gross, like are fish looking repulsive to you, or the idea of having them as pets? Asha says it would not be alive for long under my tender ministrations. Well, I can relate to that. Yes. I had my time of standing after numerous amount of different species, including various fish, but no pufferfish among them. Oh, says Halfton, I find them a bit gross. My brother had some in a tank, and I could see through them. Their entire digestive tract, etc., grosses me out. I see. Well, I guess I can imagine like how it can be repulsive. Then, if you don't mind asking, which animals do you find the most pleasant to an eye? So, could you leave him out of your food plans for now, at least?
そうなんだ。でも愛嬌のある顔をしてるし、なんとなくわかる気がするかも。
Halfton responds, the most pleasant? Cats. Cats. Well, cats are cute. They are. And they're kind of mischievous, which is also a nice trait. A single tap. Eve gave up easily enough and tapped the fishbowl, at which point Puffy's eyes met mine.
じゃあしばらくは君がこの子の守護者だね。服？俺が不在の間、この子の心をしっかり守ってあげるんだよ。
Well, I'm not surprised that you Ashas see digestive tract visible for audibility and transparency. I didn't even had doubts that you would like it and appreciate. And to be honest, I join you here, but I guess it says something about both of us. Probably not necessarily something bad, but something concerning. Puffy stopped the moment his master entrusted him with the mission. A few seconds later, as if Puffy knew what was being said, it puffed up with air as if to say that we could count on it. Guardian pufferfish. 2 hours later. Eve, have you had any trouble lately with taking care of the licorice nourishers? I thought maybe your work in the Corps might be taking up all your time.
数週間程度なら放置しても大丈夫。もともとリコリスはめったなことじゃ枯れない丈夫な花だからね。守護者とは言っても、俺は花が病気になってないか様子を見に行くぐらい。ああ、でも。
But?
枯れてはいないんだけど、昔からたまに不自然に花の数が減ってるような気がするんだ。まるで誰かがリコリスノワージュを必要として摘み取っていったみたいに。
It can't be. No matter how pretty they are, we die from the curse the moment we picked one.
だよね。けどそれならどうしてなんだろう。
Our conversation continued as we enjoyed our meal when we heard a knock at the door. The calm of the room suddenly turned tense as we looked at each other. I wonder who it is. The closed sign was out, so it probably wasn't someone looking to hire us.
アドルフかな。後で様子を見に来るって言ってたし。
Yves stuffed his mouth with a slice of meat and walked toward the door with the fork still hanging from his mouth. He slowly opened it to discover a group of unexpected guests.
イブ君、食べながら対応するのは少々行儀が悪いのでは？
先生、それにみんなも。
Yves took the fork out of his mouth and hid it behind his back after being reprimanded by our former teacher.
セレスさんもこんばんは。最後に会った時顔が真っ青だったので心配してました。
わずかだが追加の差し入れを持ってきた。保存肉と野菜だけじゃ足りないだろう。
果物に美味しいブドウ酒もありますよ。少々気が早いですが、事件解決後にでもゆっくり飲んでください。
Adolphe and the others came in, holding crates in their arms and walking past Yves, who looked on in surprise. Huh? I couldn't understand what was going on either. I see. So everyone went to buy groceries for Yves since he was too busy to go out himself. Yves got dressed in more appropriate attire and rejoined us. Thank you very much. You wouldn't have had to do this if I was able to go out to buy groceries myself.
困った時はお互い様ですからね。
I tried to express my deepest thanks to everyone for bringing us food. Is everyone alright? I know I'm a source of problems as death.
大切な教え子を信じない者に教師に就く資格などありません。
僕もあなたは死神である前に僕の初めての友達ですから。
俺は坊ちゃんのご意志に従うまでです。
理由なんて言うまでもね。
Thank you all so much. Everyone smiled at me the same way as before.
シアンとヒューゴ以外の関係者がこうして揃ったんだ。 この際お前も交えて死体発見時の状況を整理してみるか。
Okay. It seemed like none of us were going to give up on the mysterious death. Everyone sat down in the seats reserved for customers.
状況を整理するぞ。最初の変死事件が起きた時もまたこいつが第一発見者となったが、
あの時はブローが殺した遺体も混ざっていたからかなりややこしい状況になってたんだよね。その後彼はまるで検視を阻止するかのように回収前の遺体を全て潰して回っていた。
そのせいで変死事件もブローの仕業だと思い込んでましたが、
皆さんの目の前でブローは亡くなった。リライバーとして蘇った痕跡も研究所に残されていない。次元式の罠として彼が特殊な病や薬を町に流行させたという可能性もありますが。
いえ、それは彼女の両親の件がありますから。事件の前兆のようなものが彼女が誕生した時点で始まっていたとすると、さすがに時期が合いません。遺体を狙ったのは事実。しかし変死事件そのものにブローは関与していない。そう考えるのが妥当でしょ
う。なら何が目的でと思うところだが、死者の意志を追求しようとしたところで時間の無駄だな。
Adolphe glanced over at Jean for his input. Jean gracefully nodded in response and put his hand onto his vest. He took out a bunch of small papers and spread them out on the table. There were pictures that showed eerie buildings painted in a reddish black color.
これは写真といって、このカメラに収めた景色をそのまま写し取ったものです。
A camera?
例のとても希少だという。私も実物は初めて目にしました。
本来ならかなり高額なものを独自のルートで内密に譲っていただいたものなので、窃盗を防ぐためにも周囲には内密にしていただけると助かります。
We all nodded in agreement.
俺はカメラの希少性より映っている景色の方が気になるかな。じゃあもしかしてこれ遺体発見現場を撮影したものだったりする？
Huh?
おや、相当暗いのによくお気づきで。
Now that he mentioned it, I could vaguely see the silhouettes of bodies in the reddish black of the picture. When did you take this? Jean raised his head with pride. He told us the idea came that night, thinking about the possibility that the residents would harm Mathis somehow.
どうぞ後部座席へ。この場は俺たちとダハトに任せろ。こいつのことを頼む。
He quickly took some shots with the camera just before everyone jumped into the car as evidence of what happened. Fortunately, they didn't need to use that proof to defend themselves, but after developing the photos, he discovered that he had inadvertently caught the bodies in the background.
アドルフさんに協力を申して、自警団の皆さんに紛れてこっそりと現場を撮影させていただきました。いくら優秀な警備兵とて一階の執事が希少なカメラを持っているなど夢にも思わないでしょう。
あ、やっぱり。
Are you sure that was okay?
よろしくはないでしょうね。ですが手がかりが少ない現状、貴重な情報源として頂戴するしかないかと。
万が一見つかってもお金を握らせれば 見逃してもらえるってジャンが言っていました。
Pay them off?
いつ自分の命が原因不明の変死で刈り取られるかわからないんだ。だから今国民の大半は一刻も早く遺伝子と記憶のバックアップを取ろうと必死に金をかき集めてる。
その通り。おかげで買収する相手には一切困りません。
出すのはジャンのお金じゃなくてクロード家のお金なんだけど。
Even if one did have the money to revive, they would also have to wait a long time on the wait list. Not everyone had the luxury to take chances. We then gathered around to look at the invaluable photographs. The first thing that caught our attention was a picture of the victims on the night I was with Yves.
これらの写真を見て何か気になったことはないか？
Caught my attention. I glanced at the other pictures, and Alfie told me that any minor detail, whether about the wounds or the victim's traits, might lead to something. First of all, we will save here. I'm sorry. Excuse me, Jean. Do the photos show the images of all the victims that were at each scene?
俺が見落としをしていなければ何か気になることでも？
Yes. Well, it might be just a coincidence, but there are an even number of bodies in each of the photographs. Or rather, it looks like there are always two bodies near each other. As if it was decided in advance that they would die together.
あ、言われてみれば写真を撮るのに必死でまるで気づきませんでした。
それに二人一組って言われて気づいたんだけど、これ各遺体の数がすべて男女一組ずつの同数になってない？
一つならともかく全ての現場でってのは。
あ、それに見てください。これよく見ると全部の遺体の腕や足にリライバーの文様が。
他の写真も同様のようです。確信にこそ至りませんが、どちらも偶然にしては都合よく揃いすぎていますね。
If so, all the deaths must have something in common, such as
第一に全員がリライバーであること。
第二に発生現場に男女が平等数揃っていることか。
ますますわからなくなってきましたね。原因が呪いと病気、薬のいずれでもそこまで細かく条件や対象を選ぶものでしょうか。
そもそもとしてリライバーの男女が揃うだけでこんな事件が起こるなら、この国は人口の激減でとっくに滅んでるんじゃ。
もっともな意見だよね。なら他の原因や共通点があると考える方が現実的かな。
we did find unusual links among the deaths, but like Matthias and Yves said, they weren't strong enough to say we had found a lead. Should we let Cian know?
とっくに把握されているでしょう。あちらには回収された遺体のすべてが揃っているのですから。彼と競っているわけではありませんが、遺体の調査だけでこんなにも手がかかる。
この絵兵からの干渉も心配です。せめて一歩こちらが先に入手できる情報があれば、シアンさんに対してももう一度協力をお願いすることができるかもですが。
交渉材料か。シアンさんでは取れない手段で情報を集めるっていうのはありだね。何かしらの方法を考えておこ
う。The grandfather clock tolled. The time had ticked past midnight, urging everyone to leave. We didn't have space to have everyone stay the night at Kurun, so Mathis and the others quietly left one by one so that the residents wouldn't notice.
そうそう。事情を知ったカプシーヌ先生も心配して薬湯を煎じてくださったんです。なんでも緊張をほぐす効果があるのだとか。よければ食後にでも二人で飲んでください。
Thank you very much. I really am causing a lot of problems to everyone.
その心配を解消するためにも、事件や死神の噂を消さなければなりませんね。
Right. Lucas did his best to cheer me up before going back home. I looked around to find that Adolfo was the last remaining guest. Apparently, he needed to go on patrol again tonight, so after talking to me for a while, he went to leave for work.
しまった。次の巡回区域の件、アドルフに聞くのをすっかり忘れてた。ちょっと追いかけてくる。すぐに戻るから、外には絶対に出ないでね。
Okay. Be careful out in the dark, Yves. I quickly saw him off as he made a mad dash outside after Adolphe. Adolphe and Yves had been working around the clock because of the recent death. Is it really alright for me to just stay here like this? Yves told me that he was glad I was here to cook every day, but I could hardly stand just taking care of normal household chores and waiting for him to return safely. The conflicts caused by my being deaf seemed to have fallen on Yves' shoulder. If I can't go outside, maybe there is another way I can help. There had to be. As I paced, wondering what I could do, I accidentally kicked something that was on the floor. It didn't take long for me to recognize it as a transmitter used by the Corp. That looks similar to the one Yves was using before, but the transmitter I borrowed from Yves is on the table, which meant Adolphe must have dropped his own transmitter. Damn. Sorry. Really? Transmitter were very costly. Adolphe wasn't going to be able to do much without it. Then again, I shouldn't go outright after Yves told me to stay put inside. I'll talk to Yves about it when he gets back. I set Adolphe's transmitter down next to Yves, so it wouldn't be forgotten. It was late already, so I decided to get the bed ready for Yves to sleep in as soon as he returned. Suddenly, I heard a noise from outside. I turned around and looked at the entrance, wondering what it was. The door shook violently with awful sounds. What the? It definitely wasn't just the wind. My mind told me to escape, so I grabbed the ball with Buffy inside and moved to the back room. I could hear people gathering outside.
いい加減にしろ、イブ。あの小娘が大勢の人間を殺したのは明白だろ。いつまで呪われた死神をかくまう気だ。クルーンを続けたきゃ、とっととそいつを貧民街にでも捨ててこい。拒否したらどうなるか分かってるだろうな。買い物の拒否どころじゃ済まさないぞ。あの気色悪い偽善者には何を言っても通じないだろう。こういう時は自分の立場ってもんを思い知らせてやるのが一番手っ取り早いんだよ。
My body moved before my mind understood what they were saying. All I knew was the emotion coming from the other side of the door was hatred. No, pure, unadulterated malice. Unadulterated malice. I held the fishbowl in my arms and shut my eyes tightly when suddenly I heard the crack on the fence that Yves put up to protect his beloved licorice oranges. Yves caught up to Adolphe and asked him about the next patrol shifts. Upon learning more, he couldn't help but feel guilty that the vast majority fell to Adolphe himself.
アドルフにばかり負担をかけてごめん。俺だって一応は副団長なのに。
そんなこと今さら気にすんな。その分お前には妹を守ってもらってる。だがクーネの件は本当に大丈夫なのか？
Yves smiled and responded to Adolphe's vague question, saying that things were
ほ
fine.
ら、俺って自分で言うのもなんだけど、結構打たれ強いから。みんながああやって差し入れを持ってきてくれるだけでも十分に助かってるよ。
限界になったら言えよ。ヒューゴも心配してる。まあ本人は平静を装ってるつもりらしいがな。
そっか。愛想をつかされてないみたいで安心した。少しの間離れてみて自覚したけど、俺って今までヒューゴに相当甘やかされてきたよね。ヒューゴが俺のそばに当然のようにいようとしたみたいに、俺もヒューゴがそばにいるの当然だと思ってた。だからといって彼女を保護したことは絶対に後悔しないけど、
俺は自分の力で守ることもできず、お前やあいつに耐え忍ぶことばかり強いているな。肝心な時に役に立たないで何がリーダーだ。お前やヒューゴの方がよほど。
Just as Yves was about to stop Adolphe from finishing his sentence,
ここにいたのかアドルフ。まずいことになったぞ。なんだ、イブもいたのかよ。イブがいたら何か都合の悪いことでもあんのか？いや、そういうわけじゃ。むしろイブは当事者だし。イブ、すぐにクルーンへ戻れ。お前の家が大変なことになってるぞ。
the presence of the hateful mob vanished after a few minutes. The house and the fence were vandalized. The garbage strewn across the entrance was infested with rats and dead insects. The door was kicked so many times that it was nearly caved in. Until now, Corun had been full of warmth and joy, but things had changed. I looked up at the house sadly.
サレス、無事か？怪我は？
They had probably heard what happened and came running as soon as possible. Upon seeing the aftermath, they both were still. Corone. Eve's precious home. It's all my fault.
あいつら
They both understood immediately what happened. Eve embraced me to hide the sight from my view.
一人にしてごめん。怖い思いをさせちゃったよね。
I shook my head in response. I'm the one at fault. Why did they have to do this to your place, Eve? I overheard they were shutting you out from buying their goods. When I asked before, you said that things weren't any different from before. Even though I knew the answer, I couldn't hold back from asking Eve with the hope that he might say otherwise. I never stepped outside the house, which prevented me from seeing the truth. The truth about Eve protecting death. Eve knew he couldn't hide it any
少
longer.
し長い話になりそうなんだ。だから今日のところはゆっくり休んで。明日、カプシーヌ先生がくれた薬湯でも飲みながら、ゆっくり話そう。君も今は、ちゃんと話を聞ける状態じゃないだろう。
I nodded quietly in response. The next day, Mathis and the others gathered again at Corone. We explained to everyone what happened last night with the harassment from other residents of Coin. I took a few sips of the medicinal drink as I heard from Yves and Adolphe about what was really happening to Corone. They explained that Yves was seen as a possessed puppet of death because he kept me safe under his protection. The people had been bad-mouthing him out on the streets, even refusing to serve him at the Virche. Because some in the Corps had died too, the other members apart from Adolphe were distancing themselves from Yves. The trust that Corone has built in the community had vanished, and Yves was a new target of their hatred. What happened yesterday was done by a group of people who were upset that Yves wouldn't kick me out. It was safe to assume that the same thing would happen again. He hid what was happening so that I wouldn't be worried. He asked everyone to keep me from learning information about what was happening to him. Adolphe explained everything with an irritated expression.
もうリライバー技術なんざ関係ねえ。この国の人間の少年はとことん腐ってやがるな。
どうして当事者の俺よりもアドルフが怒ってるのさ。
当事者であるお前が一切怒らないからだ。
Jean calmed the two of them. So, the reason everyone came with those groceries?
はい。イブ君は現在マルシェの全店舗から商品の購入を拒否されているので。
僕たちが代わりに。でもブローの件で僕らもあなたと関わりがあるって知られているので。
下手に説得をしようとすれば我々の生活すらも危うくなりかねず。力になれず申し訳ありません。
Please, don't apologize. They were risking their lives because of me. Even Yves. He used to live a happy life, adored by everyone in Coin.
しかし困りましたね。これでは変死事件について調査するどころでは。
まずは嫌がらせをやめてもらうようクーネの皆さんの誤解を解いて回りますか。
あの薄情な連中が俺たちの話をまともに聞くと思うか。
でもこのままじゃいつ彼女やイブさんに危害を加えられるか分かりませんし。
だからこそ むやみに外に出ては危険かと思いますよ、坊ちゃん。
一人や二人なら理解者はいるのでは？全員が悪しきものだと断じるのは早計です。
Opinions were divided regarding my safety and the investigation. Eve, who was the primary target now, thought for a moment before speaking.
決めた。遺族たちが多くいる区域に行って死亡した男女の特徴を聞き出してくる。
He spoke with conviction. Eve,
お前一体何を言って、自分の置かれてる状況を理解してるのか？
everyone was doubting Eve's sanity, as he intended not to prove his innocence, but further investigate the case.
教師として許可できません。あまりにも危険すぎます。住まいの周囲でもこのありさまだというのに、彼女を恨む遺族に会いに行くなど。
責められるのが目に見えてます。
それだけならまだいい方です。最悪殺意を向けられることになりますよ。
でもこのまま家にこもったところで何も進展しない。それに前に話し合ったじゃないか。シアンさんたち研究所やこの衛兵よりも先んじて入手できる情報が欲しいって。それって地道な聞き取り調査以外にないと思うんだ。
Contacting the families of the victims was sure to fail since they wouldn't want to meet. But if he appeared in front of them without warning, they would probably confront him and vent, especially those who were still grieving, which also meant there was a good chance they would disclose information that would otherwise never be discussed. Eve explained very calmly, and in a tone that suggested he had already thought about this at length. His straightforward demeanor kept everyone from saying anything to the contrary. All except for one person. Eve, I can't have you do something so dangerous by yourself. I am the source of the problem, so I'll do it. I voiced my disagreement with resolve.
そんなの絶対にダメだ。君に万が一のことがあったら。
I could say the same to you. I don't want to harm you or ruin your life anymore. I am already prepared to suffer the hatred of the bereaved families.
その無実の罪を晴らすために話を聞きに行くんじゃないか。
We both stared at each other, refusing to give in. We continued arguing for another 10 minutes or so, until finally, Eve backed off since I wouldn't give up. We came to the conclusion that I would go with him to the families of the victims on the condition that I'd stay at his side. Things sped up from this point onward. As soon as the sun was about to set, we got into the car and drove through the alleys toward our destination. And I guess here I will end it for today. It was quite a short stream, but we've learned some new things. Some new events had happened. And I had some nice discussion with you in chat. Thank you for joining me. I hope it was a nice time for you as well. I'm glad you're liking it, Halftone. Of course, streams will be later uploaded to the YouTube, but if you will be willing to watch, will be willing and will have time and opportunity to watch other streams, feel free to. I'm always glad to have you here. But yes, again, thank you all. Please take care of yourself. Take your medications if you need any. Bye bye.